What's up there? So this is going to be my first ever video I think I've ever done. So it's going to be on the first chapter of Platinum Inn, which is a new manga by Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata. So this was the same duo that did Death Note, and then they were also known for Bakuman. Unlike those two series though, this is a monthly series. So only new chapters every month, and I was actually originally planning to do this review when the first chapter came out, because it's actually being simul-published through Viz Media and their website Viz Manga, which is where I'm reading it. There'll be a link in the description. And so I just wanted to go over first impressions on it. And so actually this first chapter came out November 4th, and each chapter will be coming out the 4th of every month on vizmanga.com. And I meant to make this impression when it first came out, but then the second one came out, and then now the third one came out, and I've actually stopped myself from reading the next two chapters because I didn't make it. So I'm basically just making this video now because I'm like, I want to read it. It looks like it's interesting. I want to keep up with it. But I wanted it so that if I did a video on it, that I could do a first impression without knowing what comes next. So I'm kind of trying to push this first one out pretty quickly. So I'm not really going to have any visuals. I'm just going to talk about my impressions on the story. This one that's on the screen right now is actually the first color spread that was with it. And for some reason it's published like a centerfold. So it's actually, what you're seeing is me flipping it vertically. In the original magazine it was actually horizontal. And then also in the digital chapter published by Viz Media it's horizontal as well. And for the other chapters I'm going to go into spoiler territory, and they're pretty much totally going to be spoilers. But also for this first one I wanted to give an impression that somebody who maybe hasn't read it yet could listen to and check it out. So there's not going to be any spoilers here except for the basic setup of the series, which is not spoilers at all really. So the basic premise of the series is that it's starting on the day that the character you see on the screen, Mirai, is graduating from his third year in middle school. This also happens to be the day that he decides to commit suicide. From this though is where the actual plot of the story comes in, where very similar to Death Note, and there's a lot of parallels to Death Note inside the manga itself, is a mysterious force comes down and changes the boy's life. So in this case, it's his guardian angel, which you can also see on the image on the screen. So this angel basically saves him from committing suicide, and she presents Mirai with two choices. He can either choose an angelic set of wings, which will give him freedom. So this will give him the freedom to fly and the freedom to travel around the world at lightning fast speeds, things like that. And the other option that the angel gives him are angelic arrows. And these arrows are basically arrows that can be shot at people, and they don't do any physical damage. They just make these people fall in love with the person who shot them. So the two things that she's essentially giving him is the idea of freedom and the idea of love. And then what ends up happening is he gets both of them. And that's really what the setup is. Doesn't take too long for the manga to get to that point. And so from then on, I'm not really going to talk about what else happens in it. So the first chapter is basically suicidal kid gets these powers. What is he going to do with them now? And this is very similar to the beginning of Death Note, where same setup, where kid now has the power to purge the earth with people, kill them, blah blah blah. But they are very different characters, which is what I'm happy about. Is the main character of this one isn't a loser. He's not a loser in the sense that he's bad at life. It's just life sucks for him. And then you find out in the first chapter why he's going to commit suicide, and then why is he so depressed, and that kind of ends up being the twist of the manga. And so there is one other part that I will talk about for the first chapter though, which is that, so this whole aspect of the angel coming down and giving a teenage boy powers is very similar to Death Note, but in a lot of ways it's actually inversed. Where in Death Note, it's a young boy gets the powers to kill people. In this case, it's a young boy gets the powers to make people fall in love with him. And the wing part is a little extraneous. I guess maybe you could equate it to the Shinigami eyes that happen in Death Note, which are just kind of a mystical part that is kind of just a bonus, where it doesn't seem like it's going to be as big of a deal as the arrows may be in this case, but it can go a lot of ways. But also in Death Note, you can see how an entire series is made off the premise of you can kill anybody you want, but it's much harder to see a series based off the premise of you can make anybody you want fall in love with you without that getting too repetitive. Because it's not you making people fall in love with other people, it's you making people fall in love with yourself. So there is a way where this entirely diverges from how it mirrors or how it is the inverse of Death Note, or in the fact that Death Note was a very singular story. It's about this person, like I said before. So it's a case scenario. Kid gets these powers. That's not all what this series is, and that's the other part that I will kind of spoil, not really, because they don't go into it till the later part of the chapter, the very first chapter, but it really is the setup for the main series, which is that he's not the only one with these powers. And what this actually is a tournament manga, and what this series is actually going to be, or what I'm presuming it's actually going to be, is a tournament series, where she's only one angel who has come down to Earth and given these people these powers. There are other angels who have also done this, and there's kind of a competition between these angels and these humans that they've selected to see who will become the next god. And then just like in Death Note, where they don't really explain that much about the afterlife, so not sure where that's going to go, if it's going to be too specific about what God is, what the afterlife is. I kind of like how they keep that ambiguous in Death Note. In the case of this manga, I feel like they are going to go more in depth. There is a certain scene in this manga where guardian angels exist, and you actually do see a guardian angel take the soul from somebody who's passed away. To not spoil Death Note, I won't say what the answer is, but they do give an answer in that manga to what happens to a human after they die. And similarly, they give an answer in this one as well that I'm not sure if I like, because Death Note kept it a lot clearer. I'm obviously comparing this manga to Death Note a lot, but it's kind of hard not to, but they are different. And then especially in this way, I don't want to spoil either one. Like, I'm trying not to spoil this first chapter, and I'm trying not to spoil the last chapter of Death Note if somebody hasn't watched it, which is totally okay. I'm totally for not spoiling things, even years after they've come out. I'm all for that. So yeah, won't spoil either, but it's very similar to Death Note in many ways, and in other ways it's almost the opposite or inverse. But in that main aspect, that's what I feel is going to be the most different, where it's really going to diverge from the previous work of the author, where even comparing it to the story, to their series after Death Note that the duo did, Bakuman, there's a huge part in that manga where it's the story of them creating a series that is very visually, like very stylistically evocative of both Death Note and then even this one, where it's called, I believe, Othello? No, it's called Reverse Eye, which I believe is another name for Othello, which is a board game. Or maybe Reverse Eye is just a word used in Othello. I don't remember. But it's related to that. And Reverse Eye is a game that uses black and white pieces. And then just looking at the image on the screen, you can see that there's black and white, blah, blah, blah. Same thing, Death Note. Main character's name, Light, World of Dark. There is a lot of that. Teenagers and a very life and death, dark and light kind of case scenarios. So yeah. So just separating myself from all of that comparison to Death Note. Did I like the first chapter? Yes, I did. You may be wondering, for a first chapter is usually longer, and it's a monthly series. So yeah, it's pretty long. I believe it's, let me check. So it's over 60 pages. And each chapter is probably going to be around 50, probably over 50 pages anyways. So did I like the first chapter? Yes, I did like the first chapter. It's very talky, which is what I like about Tsugumi Oba series. Like, I like in Bakuman, you get walls of text. I like in Death Note, you get walls of text. And I like, people hate exposition. I like exposition. The first chapter has a lot of exposition. Not in a bad way, though. I feel like it actually has less exposition than any of their other previous two series. There's a lot of action in the first chapter. And I guess that may be one of the things I'm most looking forward to, is seeing a more action-oriented series, which I feel like this is definitely by far going to be their darkest series. And one of the things that I'm kind of upset that I didn't make this video earlier about is that the person who officially translates this in English is named Stephen Paul, and he's on the One Piece podcast, because he also does the English translation for the One Piece manga for Viz. And so he basically revealed, before the first chapter of Platinum End even came out, he revealed that he's like, yeah, so I've already started reading like the second and third chapters, the storyboards, and they're pretty explicit. So I knew that something really explicit's gonna. I know that something. So I know that something really explicit's gonna come in the manga, but actually at this point that I'm recording this, it's Viz Media's has already gone and retroactively changed the age rating to the series to mature. It used to be mature plus. I mean not mature plus. It used to be. So the rating used to be like teen plus, so they'd say like 16 and over. It's kind of in that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure range. Their Shonen Jump Advanced line of books. But this one has now been pushed to the mature line. So it's been retroactively, you can't buy it on their apps anymore because their apps are non-mature, they're for teenagers only, and they haven't made a mature app yet. They may make one in the future. So to read this one, you do have to purchase it on their vismanga.com and you have to read it inside the browser. Or alternatively, you can do it on other apps that don't limit themselves to that teen rating, which I believe apps like Comixology. So I believe you can buy it on Comixology as well. So that kind of sucks. I really do like reading on my tablet. And I still have it downloaded on my tablet, so as I'm recording this, I'm swiping through the pages on my tablet. And then just some other things. Story is okay. It's just mainly a setup right now. Emotion-wise, the main character does go through an arc in the first chapter, because obviously he committed suicide, and so that's what you get the backstory of. And that's kind of the crux of the arc for the first chapter, more so than the exposition of this is your two powers, this is what the goal is, somebody has to become God, there's going to be a tournament. It's not a tournament, by the way, it's just one of these people who have the powers is going to be the next God. Hasn't made explicit how that's going to happen. So yeah, so all the story stuff is fine. Really though, I've told you like 20% maybe of what the content is. A lot of the content is actually the main character's story, which I do find his story actually good. But I do feel that his background is going to be pretty self-contained to the first chapter, because I haven't read the next chapters yet. And then I feel like it is going to focus much more heavily on the otherworldly or battle for God type of story. I don't think they're going to focus too much on his backstory anymore, and that's what the first chapter encapsulates. And I'm hoping though that his character change that happens in the first chapter is something that's carried through, because the series does open with the series does open with this message that his mother tells him, which are the lines like, I believe humans are born to be happy and we live for the sake of being happier. And that kind of comes full circle in the first chapter. So I'm hoping that that's something that comes full circle throughout the entire series. I do think it's kind of not like the most poetic or correctly worded thing ever, but I do think it's an interesting motto to live by. It's an interesting way that this character can live after committing suicide, is that so that even if he has a bad life, he's not just going to live for the sake of living, he's going to live for the sake of being happy, and then being happier, becoming happier. So places that I want it to go, I want it to still be character focused, just like Death Note is, just like Bakuman is. I don't think it will either. I don't think it'll get bogged down in otherworldly magic. Death Note definitely doesn't. And I'm hoping that it mainly is a character study where it's now that this first chapter is over, we'll see where he's going to go once he's placed in this situation. I'm hoping that it is much more reactionary rather than Death Note's where first chapter he's like, I'm going to change the world. I hope that this one is a little bit more, I'm trying to better my life, but I don't have a clear goal. I kind of like that better. Like, I hope that the second chapter doesn't start off and he's just like, I'm going to become God. And it's like, we know that's what the series is set up for, but I hope that the character is a little bit more taken out of that push, because obviously he's going to be pushed by the angel to become the next God. That's about it story-wise. Just a few other comments. Art-wise, great art. It's by Takeshi Obata. He's done a few series after Bakuman, and between this one, I was waiting for him and Tsugami Oba's reuniting. He did, the manga adaptation of All You Need Is Kill, which in America was released as the film Edge of Tomorrow, which are both very good, the manga and the movie and the light novel. I actually read and watched all of them. And he also did the series Gakuhote, School Judgment, which Viz Media also released digitally, and they'll be releasing the physical volume soon, I believe, in bookstores. And it is interesting. There is a reference in this first chapter to Gakuhote, maybe. Very similar line, but it may just be a common saying in Japanese. I'm not sure. And while the art is good, there are some places where I feel like Obata has gotten more cartoony over the years, where I feel like some of his older series are much more realistic. Like character designs are much more like facial features, facial structure are much more photorealistic. But then there are sometimes in this manga, and it definitely comes through in his previous series. What is it, Gakuhote? Definitely comes through clearer in something like Gakuhote, where it is more exaggerated, and faces are exaggerated, and characters are just their personalities are exaggerated. So the art expresses that. But in manga like this, where it's more realistic or trying to appeal to more basic human emotions, there are times where I feel like Obata makes art more exaggerated in ways that he maybe wouldn't have used to. So like there are crying shots in this manga, and then the characters' eyes get very watery and they get very blobby, but it doesn't look like real people eyes. It looks like something more out of a very old shoujo manga, like what is it, Moto Hagio? Like one of those, like Heart of Thomas, one of those ones. It seems their eyes seem very much more cartoony. But you can see just like on the image on the screen, still very good art. And there are certain computer generated effects used, like on the cover. I'm guessing that on that cover spread, I'm guessing that both the halo and then the red rings around Mirai's arms are both computer generated, because they definitely are in the actual manga themselves. And there are certain effects like that they look out of place just because the rest of the art is pretty organic. And then when you get in the actual manga where there are certain pieces of art where like that was layered over this with a computer, then it doesn't look bad. Doesn't look the best though. And so yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. As soon as I'm done recording this, gonna go read the second chapter, and if it's really good, then I'll have to record the second one, and then I'll have to. That way I can read the third one. The fourth chapter isn't out yet though, so I'll probably be really lazy about recording an impression for the third chapter. So yeah, this may be my first ever YouTube video ever. So sorry if it was long, sorry if it was weird. Give me comments on the bottom. Just wanted to do something. I thought it'd be fun to talk about it. And one of the main reasons I did want to talk about it is because I'm really happy that Viz is releasing this manga. But at the same time, there are other things that I don't like about the release. So yeah, I recommend everybody go to vizmanga.com. I believe they're available in like 7 territories. So definitely the North America. So they're definitely available in the US, Canada, UK, and then I believe there are some other United Kingdom ones are available in. So one of the main reasons I did want to talk about it though is because I'm just so happy that Viz is releasing it. I'm not surprised that they're releasing it though. It's the next series by Takeshi Obata and Tsugumi Oba, so definitely a big deal. Definitely going to be a print one really soon. They definitely love Obata. They released, as I mentioned earlier, they released 2 previous series digitally, Gakuhote and All You Need Is Kill. And Bakuman and Death Note were definitely big sellers for them. I do think they definitely have a lot to expect from the series. They definitely expect it to sell good. At the same time, they are trying a different release model where they're releasing this one chapter by chapter. And as I said earlier, the reason for that almost definitely is that the second and maybe third and maybe definitely chapters after that, this is going to be an explicit series where it's not running in Weekly Shonen Jump in Japan. It's running in what used to be Monthly Shonen Jump, which is now Jump Square. And that's not a much more mature one. It's still a shonen magazine, but it does have much more. But it does have certain content which is much more mature, where it does have the series To Love Ru, which has plenty of nipples, plenty of bare nipples everywhere. And so, yeah, it definitely has that aspect to it, which is probably why they didn't add it to their Weekly Shonen Jump magazine, which I'm also subscribed to, which if you read any of those series, you should definitely be. It's great. But they do have other series that run in Jump Square that are monthlies in that magazine as well, such as Seraph of the End or Blue Exorcist. And both of those series are violent, and they definitely have gore at times, but they don't have the more American issue of nudity or sexuality, which is what's going to probably be coming up in this manga. So that's probably the reason. Is it worth $1 still? It's definitely worth $1. Um, 99 cents. At first, I do feel kind of bad about it because I understand where people are saying, well, which I understand the argument or like the reaction that on the exact same website you can buy an issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, which has like half a dozen manga in it, and then sometimes like quadruple the page count as one chapter of Platinum End for exactly the same price. They'll quadruple the chapters, but the thing is that in both cases, I feel like they're still underselling themselves. Like it's worth 99 cents. How I looked at it, because I did have that reaction a little bit myself too. But how I looked at it is everybody, almost probably everybody has been to a dollar store, and I just looked at it as if I could go to a dollar store and they were like, "Hey, you could buy this toy car or this puzzle," because I don't know, I would always get puzzles and like just small toys at the dollar store because I was a kid mostly. But yeah, so like you can buy a small toy at the dollar store, some plastic arrow set, some water gun for $1, something like that, or you could read the first chapter of Platinum End. I would read the first chapter of Platinum End, and that's basically how I solve that in my mind. Is just like it definitely is worth $1, and they have talked about they are thinking that maybe because they are selling it in single issues that maybe they will create a deal where if you buy all the issues you may get the volume, or you may just get the digital volume when it finally comes out, or you may just get a discount on the digital volume when it comes out, because these chapters are very long, like 50 pages. So this is going to be one of those series where there are some monthlies who are shorter, so they'll have like 6 chapters per volume, but this is one of those ones where I'm guessing 4 chapters per volume. So you buy all 4 chapters month to month, you bought the first volume, which is cheaper than what you'd pay in the physical store, cheaper than what you'd pay on Viz's online store. It's like one their volumes are running $7. Even on a sale, they'd run $5, and you're buying that volume for $4 as it comes out. So it's still definitely worth it. So recommend it, yes, of course, first chapter. And I definitely recommend it, and I recommend you go buy it and read it on Viz's website or Comixology if you're more comfortable with that.